Well, this is a fun one. I was once at the beach with my brother and cousins, just having a grand old time swimming and letting the waves crash against our bodies. I've never really been physically gifted, but I'm a good swimmer, so when we all decided to start swimming farther away from the shore, I was pretty confident of being able to make it back. And so we went on, the shoreline becoming a mere line of sand in our eyes, and the rest of our kin the size of ants. Before we realized it, the sun was beginning to set, and in what seemed like only a few minutes, the waves, which were already very tall to begin with, easily tripled the size of 15-year-old me. When that happened, and our mothers became aware, they all hurried us to go back to the shore, and funnily enough, nobody hesitated. The task was easy for my brother and cousins, all of whom are taller and older than me, so I tried to follow them. I swam and I swam and I swam. No matter how much I seemed to swim, I was no closer to the shoreline than I was before. In fact, it wasn't long before I realized I was actually getting further away. The waves had begun pulling my body backwards into the ocean without me being fully aware of it. I could even hear the lifeguard's whistle telling the others to get out of the water. That's when I felt the peculiar heartbeat in my chest, the one that you feel when you're about to ask that girl out that you like, or the kind that you feel when you're about to reveal to your parents the bad grades you got at school. The kind of heartbeat that indicates fear. As soon as I felt it, I realized I was in big trouble. I felt like I was going to become another one of those drowned kids at the beach tales mothers told their sons as a way to keep them close to shore. My brother was completely out of sight along with my cousins, and I was still there, trapped by waves that consistently grabbed my feet and pulled it deeper into the ocean. At this point I was panicking, and I wasn't sure when or even if my family would go to the lifeguard for help. Against uncertainty, I decided that I had no choice but to keep trying to swim back to shore, and that I did. It was hard, very hard, and if you ask me how I did it today, I'd tell you I'm one clever motherfucker. Or maybe the problem wasn't as bad as I believed it to be. Once I was able to calm down again, I knew that all those tales of drowned people always went bad when they started panicking. So I took a deep breath and began doing this little, quote, technique. Whenever the waves pulled, I'd swim slowly, trying to maintain the ground I was in, and when the waves pushed, I gave it my all. I swam as fast as I could, thinking and knowing that the momentum of the waves, plus my efforts, would help me reach the shore again. To this day, I had no idea if I was right or wrong. Soon, I could feel the motes of sand running across my toes once again. Only a few more seconds passed before my chest laid a thin sheet of sand, and a few more passed before I could walk on it. It felt like pure bliss and badassery. I felt like an aquatic Bear Grylls for being able to come up with such a solution, and was eager to tell my mom and cousins about it. Soon, of course, reality hit me again. I was received with a slap by my mother, who continued to rant on about how she had told me not to go so far away, how they were about to call the lifeguards, and how dumb I had been to disobey. My kin laughed at me as my mother yelled, and I soon learned that I only spent 5 to 10 minutes at sea anyway. Quite a few years ago, there was a tropical storm coming up the coast. It didn't make landfall, but it was close enough to where we got the rain, wind, and huge waves that come with it. Onshore winds were probably 25 to 35 miles per hour, and waves hit 8 to 10 feet. It was so insanely choppy. Never in my life have I seen the waves that big and close together. My brothers and I went to go surf, but it was too choppy, so we grabbed our bodyboards and fins and paddled out. 5 minutes in, my one brother got out since he doesn't live on the coast and isn't the strongest swimmer. He also didn't have fins, so he watched from the beach. My other brother is on beach patrol, but was off, so the on-duty lifeguards pulled everyone out because of the rip currents and waves, but let us go in. We took a few waves, having a great time, but started to get worn out from consistently diving and fighting the waves trying to get back out. I dove under a wave, and as soon as I came up, I saw the biggest wave of my life cresting. I knew it was about to come down hard on my head, so, like an idiot, I ditched my board and swam to the bottom. Not the best idea to ditch something that floats, but I had fins and probably wouldn't have been able to hold on anyway. The wave slammed me into the sand. I rolled head over heels for what felt like an eternity. Just as I got my bearings and started coming up to the surface, I heard another wave pound right above me, and the same thing happened again. I tried coming up again, but a third wave hit. Finally, I could tell I was getting close to the beach because I was being dragged across the sand. I was able to hold on to the sand while the water went out and was able to finally breathe and stand up. I called it a day after that. My back was bleeding from being dragged across the sand and my legs felt like jelly. It probably wasn't more than 30 seconds, but shit, being underwater and not being able to come up for even that short of time is scary as fuck. But damn, it was fun before that. When I was 12, I was at the beach with my family friends. We were messing around and our parents told us to come in. As the kids filtered out of the water, I lingered. The water was drawing back farther and farther and I scooted closer to the lapping waves, diving into them and laughing my head off when I emerged. There was, however, one problem. I was behind the waves. This, at the time, didn't seem like a problem, and I decided that it was finally time to head out of the water. I tried to paddle out, but couldn't seem to get in front of the waves. Panic began to settle like a weight on my chest as realization dawned upon me. I was stuck in the riptide. Now, keep in mind, when you're in a riptide, there are a few things that you have to do. First, calm the fuck down. Second, wave your hands to get the lifeguard's attention. Third, stay calm. If you're panicking, your likelihood of drowning is raised considerably. Of course, I panicked and started shrieking to try and get my mom's attention. Naturally, she couldn't hear me. I was drifting further and further out. Thank God I was a good swimmer for my age. Not to mention the adrenaline that flooded my senses was enough to keep me going until a group of older boys saw me panicking and swam into the riptide to help me. They had a boogie board that I held onto as they caught the attention of the lifeguard. Nobody ended up getting hurt, and I was gently instructed on what to do when I get stuck in a riptide. The lifeguard and I slowly made our way back to shore. This was all good, however, I was still a bit embarrassed because it is pretty obvious that you really just aren't supposed to panic and scream. If it hadn't been for the group of boys that got the lifeguard's attention, I don't really know what I would have done. It's my first summer on a busy beach, and I'm sitting by our pier doing my best to look like a competent lifeguard. It's a crowded tower full of surfers, a few fishermen, and families. The waves were good, which sometimes causes issues between surfers and bathers. But it's low tide and there are several slows with a few feet of water in them acting as kiddie pools, so everything was mellow. Or so I thought. I hear a commotion at one of the slows where several children are playing and I turn to look. A group of adults have surrounded a fisherman and whatever is going on is escalating quickly. Several people motion for me to come over. I grab my two-way radio, buoy, and go. Sharks. That's what the fisherman had been catching. The kiddie pool. That's where he had been releasing them. Really drunk. That's what he was, and he thought it was hilarious. They were little tiny sharks, so it kind of was hilarious, but now it was my problem, so no, it wasn't hilarious. Luckily, someone had already called the cops, and they were nearby. I kept an eye on the water and an ear on the conversation as the parents ripped this guy a new one, and the cop made him borrow a net and pull out all the baby sharks back in the ocean. I've never seen or heard anything like that since. When I was about 6, I went for a walk along the beach with my mom and sister, who was only 1 year old at the time. My mom was pushing my sister in her buggy, and I was cavorting and gathering shells. All was good. We were near a lighthouse which had a sunken tidal path to it, and long story short, my mom had misread the tide times that morning and hadn't read the sign at the top of the path. About halfway through our walk back from the lighthouse, the sea suddenly seemed way closer than it should be. I see nothing wrong with this being 6, but my mom immediately and justifiably freaks out. She rushes along the path with the buggy, yelling for me to keep up, but I got distracted trying to gather my bucket of shells. Now, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I ended up on my own at the bottom of a really steep slope, with the water literally at my heels and my mom shouting and crying from the top of it for me to run up. I was terrified and absolutely frozen, and I remember distinctly just thinking that I was gonna die. It was getting dim, nobody was around, and my mom later told me she was desperately just trying to find some way to get back down the slope to get me without putting my baby sister in danger as well. I eventually snapped out of it and climbed the slope really slowly, using these smooth metal things that were laid into the path as handholds. By the time I got to the top of the path, the rest was completely covered by water. I was fine, but shaken. and my mom never took us back down that path again without triple checking the tide times first. Gave me a lasting, healthy respect for the ocean, mind you. Tides can come in quicker than you'd ever expect. Don't play around with that shit. Many years ago, when I was young and single, two buddies of mine and I took a ski boat out to a local area lake that was quite popular with the 20-something crowd. We picked an area in front of a popular beach to begin our skiing. Our buddy Larry volunteered to be the first to ski as he spotted 3 single females sunning on that nearby beach. He had a plan. He told us to pull him towards that area of the beach and then make a sharp left turn. He was going to let loose of the ski ropes and then ski onto the beach, hoping to impress those girls and start a conversation. All was going as planned, except the boat was going a bit too fast, and the sharp left turn served to propel Larry towards the beach much faster than planned. He hit the sand going way too fast. His upper body was leaning forward while his legs came out of the skis. His legs and flailing arms made him look like a big seabird taking off from the water, and then he slammed face first into the sand right in front of the girls. He got up, brushed himself off, walked back to the skis, and waited for us to pick him up as the sound of 3 hysterically laughing young ladies followed him. Yep, he certainly made an impression all right, on the girls and in the sand. When I was in high school, my grandmother taught me how to sew, and I made most of my clothes. This skill has remained a hobby throughout my life. In preparation for a tropical vacation, I made several bikinis. They were constructed with 3 plastic rings. One ring, placed in the center of the top, held the 2 bra sections together, and the other 2 rings connected the front of the bikini bottom to the back. The rings were placed on each hip. Using plastic rings to hold my itty-bitty bikini together turned out to be a very bad idea. After sunbathing for a while, I needed to cool off. I ran and dove into the clear turquoise ocean. After a nice refreshing swim, I stood up and began walking back to the shore. To my horror, the plastic rings holding my bikini together had melted in the hot sun, and they fell off while I was swimming. I can still see the bald man with the big belly dropping his cigar in the sand. Heading back into the ocean for cover, I waited for my beachmate to swim out with a cover-up. I felt hundreds of eyes staring at me as I walked back to the beach. This happened 40 years ago, and I feel like it was still yesterday. I was traveling alone in southern France. One particular night, I decided to camp above a little beach in the outskirts of Nice. There were no flat spots, so I didn't pitch any tent, and I slept in my sleeping bag on a sloped patch of grass. I got a terrible night of sleep due to a beach cleaning truck, a group of teenagers that walked by, and my shitty choice of sleeping location. I woke up early in the morning to find that someone had taken my pack of cigarettes that was sitting inches from me as I slept, which is creepy as hell now that I think about it. The next day I decided to go snorkeling and stashed my backpack in a bush. I returned to find that someone had stolen half my clothes, my journal, my souvenirs, and all of my toiletries along with some of my electronics. I know, I'm a fucking idiot. This was pretty devastating, but the snorkeling was amazing. Later that evening, I was talking to a local fisherman on the beach, and I mentioned what happened. He said someone was probably watching me that morning, and saw me stash my stuff. None of this seemed too weird to me at the time, but looking back, it's really fucking creepy. I was in Newport, Rhode Island one summer, and I decided to go surfing at the beach during red tide season. Because I'm from California, I figured that I could handle, quote, just a little kelp, because in Malibu there's a ton of kelp, and it never really interfered with my surfing before. When I got to the beach in Newport, I suited up in my wetsuit and started to paddle on my board toward an area away from the red and smelly kelp. About 10 minutes in, I started catching a wave and I noticed a stinging sensation on my foot. When I brought my foot up onto the board, there wasn't a single scratch, so I continued surfing. Then, all of a sudden, I started to feel stinging sensations everywhere. I raced out of the ocean with my board and ripped my wetsuit off to find 20+ sea lice biting me underneath. I picked every disgusting bug off of myself and then went to go sit in my car. Even then, I still had sea lice in my hair, biting my scalp. I didn't go back in the ocean for the rest of the week, and I'll never go into the ocean again during red tide season. getting stuck on open ice during a blizzard. School got canceled for us, and the radio said that there was 130 to 150 kilometer winds due with heavy snow, but the sky was clear, so we just thought the school board was overreacting when they canceled that day. Me and a few friends decided we were going to go down to the beach and fuck around on the ice for a bit. We were going to play some hockey or take a walk out to the shipping channel, that sort of shit. So we were halfway out the shipping channel, like 15 minutes of walking, when one of my friends points down the bay at what could only be described as a rolling wall of snow. But it was far away, so we turned back and just started walking at our normal speed. Well, that wall was moving a hell of a lot faster than we thought because it hit us within 5 minutes and the wind almost knocked us off our feet. At that point, the ice starts creaking, so we all get on our bellies. We literally couldn't see more than a meter in front of us, but luckily we were already pointed towards land, so we just belly crawled until the creaking stopped, and kept walking forwards until we came across a set of snowmobile tracks which we followed in. It took us half an hour to get back to shore.